now is spend a little bit of time on the actual products, putting these things into practice so that you can make an informed choice of the products that you want to use, and then open this up for your questions. These are our student textbooks on the high school, middle school level. It's called Principles and Choices. We created this program so that in a school setting, you could, or a homeschool setting, you could teach this entire curriculum using a textbook series. The first 3 chapters of every book doesn't even talk about abortion or euthanasia. It just talks about the principles. So if you'd like to be able to apply this to other areas of interest to you, you can do that without weaving the pro-life throughout the whole thing. The 4th chapter of each of the books weaves in abortion and euthanasia and shows how these principles apply to that specific issue. But in the first 3 chapters of each book, we use other issues as examples. We use capital punishment, we use poverty, we use homelessness, we use discrimination, we use people who are disabled, we use immigration. And so there are all these other issues of social justice that are tied in throughout the books to help people really understand these principles and embrace them and live them before they even get to the pro-life issues. Those are sometimes the hardest for people to apply, so we save that for the end. The first book, Identity and Values, is on the 4 levels of happiness. The 2nd chapter in that first book is on success and quality of life. The 3rd chapter is on love and how to define love. It has a little bit on sex. We don't deal a lot with the chastity issue. There are all kinds of other resources and organizations who do that well. So we just touch on that in this book. We show how the definition of love leads to your definition of sexuality and the meaning of sex. And then the last chapter is on abortion and euthanasia. The books are very interactive. They're meant to be workbooks, but they're also learning textbooks. And we have these books as e-book versions as well. You can't get the e-book version with your package here. We're only offering hard copies. But if you're teaching in a school and you use e-books and you'd like to implement this, that's a less expensive method of implementing the program in your high school or in your middle school. We've tested this book on the high school level, 9th through 12th, and we've also tested it on 7th and 8th grade level. And it works very well in the 7th and 8th grade level as well as the high school level. The second book on truth and reason goes through those 3 principles, the first 3 principles of logic and reason. So it first lays out objective truth. There's a whole chapter that defines objective truth and proves that there is such a thing as objective truth, not just in science, but also in morality. And so it helps answer that question, there's no such thing as moral absolutes. And actually, yes, there are. And you can give evidence for that. When I was debating this physician, I keep returning to this debate, but it's very profound. When I was debating this physician at Berkeley a couple weeks ago, he makes this claim. He just makes this absolute claim that there are no moral absolutes in human reproduction. And he has a big slide. There are no moral absolutes in human reproduction. Thinking, really, you are absolutely sure that there are no moral absolutes in human reproduction? Okay. Aside from the fact that that is an intrinsic contradiction, I said, Doctor, I would bet that because I think you are, at heart, a compassionate person, that you would agree with me that it is absolutely morally wrong for men to choose to reproduce themselves by raping women. And it was silent. Yeah. There are moral absolutes in human reproduction. Indeed, there are. Well, you can give a lot of evidence for that just using philosophy in this book. And then the 2nd and 3rd chapters of the book go through those 3 principles of truth, the principle of non-contradiction, the principle of verifiable evidence, and the principle of complete explanation. And then the last chapter applies that definition to a human person. What is a human person? Uses those principles to get a definition of the human person, and then applies it to the unborn. Is an unborn child? Do we have objective evidence and a complete explanation that includes the unborn child in that class of human personhood? So what we do there. In the 3rd book, it's on ethics and justice. And if you can see, we're doing these books in order, and we highly encourage you to use them in order. And that book, the first chapter, goes through the 3 principles of ethics. 2nd chapter is on the 3 principles of justice. The 3rd chapter is a whole definition of freedom, what real freedom is, because that's a critical issue and point to make when you're teaching this, especially in the respect life. And then the 4th chapter applies all of those issues to abortion and euthanasia. We highly encourage, if you use these 3 books, that you use them all and you use them in order, but you don't have to. If you're like, I really like that 2nd book, that's all I need. Or our genetics teacher, or science teacher would really love that book. Each book can stand alone. You could use it on its own and teach from it, and it will form its own class, and it will give a good, strong argument for the respect life positions on a whole host of issues. But we highly encourage you to use all 3 and to use them in order. That's how we tested them, and that's how they work best. We also find that they work best when you use them over time. We recommend book 1 in the 9th grade, book 2 in the 10th grade, and book 3 in the 11th or 12th grade, so that you give students a time, and it's really hard to implement this program if you're trying to do it all in one semester or in 1 year. You just don't have time to do it, and I realize that it's much easier for teachers in schools when they spread it out over 3 years, or some of them even do it over 4 years. We have some schools that will put all 3 books together, plus all the peripheral materials and resources we have, and make a mandatory or an elective 1 semester class out of it that students take separate from a theology or a philosophy or a social justice class. And you can do that as well. The other thing that we have that goes along with it is a website. This website you have free access to with the student textbooks, and it has, aside from being a promotional marketing sales website, it also has all the materials under students and educators that the students need. So the book makes frequent reference to the website, and the students go online, and there's all kinds of activities and handouts and assignments online that they can access. Another thing that we have is by the way, those textbooks are sometimes used in religious education classes. They can be very useful in a religious education scenario. But most churches, most parishes do not use the textbooks because the students aren't reading homework outside of class. So we created a whole bunch of materials that work in the school setting, but were actually created for religious education classes, for adult, college level, middle school and high school level religious education, or for study groups or organizational settings. This is one of them. This is our video on the 4 levels of happiness. This video doesn't talk about the pro-life issues at all. It doesn't get into abortion, euthanasia, any of the other issues. It's just on the 4 levels of happiness. And it starts with man-on-street interviews, and then it's kind of a docudrama where you go through the learning of the 4 levels of happiness, and then the last 20 minutes is an actual classroom with actors where the teacher is answering most of the typical questions you get from students. Why isn't there a 5th level of happiness, right? If you can go up through the levels 1 through 3, 4, can you go back down through the levels? You know, they have all kinds of creative questions, and we answer all of those. It's a 30-minute video. It's very useful in a youth group setting, in a religious education setting, and it's useful for college level. Then what we did was we created a play. We took all of the concepts in the books and we taught them in a 4-act play, and each act covers the material in the corresponding book with a 4th section on suffering and evil. There is no book that covers the suffering and evil. We're going to make that a free online resource. We haven't released it yet because we want teachers to get used to using the first 3 books. A lot of teachers want to dive into suffering and evil. That's what I really want, because that's interesting, right? You do that without these first 3, and you really can't give a theology of suffering without a whole theology of meaning and purpose in life and love first. So we're kind of strategically releasing these. But the play features 2 characters, Robert and Emma. The play starts out with Robert as a pro-choice freshman in high school, and Emma is a pro-life Christian freshman in high school, and they're put together in a debate, in their debate class to debate abortion. And there's a character in that first act named Andrew, and Andrew is a student with Down syndrome. And the actor who plays the part of Andrew in the audio drama, we had professional voice actors produce the play on audio. It's not video, it's audio drama, was Eric Matthews, the young man, the friend of mine I told you about, who has Down syndrome and spoke in front of the Washington State Legislature. So you get to hear him as the actor of Andrew in that scene. So there are 4 CDs that come with the audio drama, where this is also very useful. What we recommend for this is if you're teaching in a high school, after you've taught each book, the teacher's resource comes with the corresponding audio drama already in it, bundled up with it. So you can play that at the end of the 2-week learning so the students get to hear it. All these principles actually come alive in the play. And the play is quite interesting, and what we recommend is you do it over the 4 years, so that in the 9th grade they get Act 1, and in the 10th grade they get Act 2, and 11th grade they get Act 3, and so it's kind of like this mini-series. And in the 12th grade, when they don't have a book to study, they get Act 4, which is on suffering and evil, and somebody dies, you get to find out who dies and who falls in love, and it's kind of cool, you know, it's cute. It's got some cringe factor in it, like, oh, okay, that was goofy, but it's a good play. It's not a bad play. So I think you would like that. The play is also very useful if you have limited time and you only want to teach this, say, over 4 weeks in a religious education class. Or if you want to bring this back to your organization, or in a pregnancy center, you'd like to teach these concepts, but you only have 4 weeks to do it in. Or maybe only 2 weeks. You can play 2 half-hours one week and then 2 half-hours the other week. There's free downloadable handouts for discussion guide online that you can get with it. And they look like this. And it all comes free online to download. Then there's this kit called Life in a Flash. You all got a free copy of this. If you didn't receive it, you go to the registration table afterwards and get them after this session. Life in a Flash are 10 cards. They're flashcards playing cards, and on one side it teaches one of the principles we learned, and on the other side it shows a dilemma that you have to resolve without violating the principle on the other side of your card. It's very useful in a small group setting, in a religious education class. It could be very useful to teach from in a counseling setting, to go through the principle and kind of talk about it. You don't have to flip the card over if you don't want to use that example. You can apply it in another way. And it could also be used for training. If you want to do a quick training of your other staff in these concepts, maybe if you're working with a hospice or something and you want to teach these concepts very quickly to the rest of your staff, this is a good tool to do it. And that's why we gave you this for free today, because it's a really good, it's like the Cliff Notes, or what do they call them today, Quick Notes or something, for people to learn this very quickly. There are also teacher resources that come with, for each of the books. The teacher resources have full learning plans and pacing guides and learning outcomes. Every activity, assignment, exam is all loaded online for free. There are codes in the book that show you where to go online to get all that stuff, so you don't have to do any work if you don't want to. You just wake up in the morning, see what you're doing today, and bang, it's plug and play. And then there are CD PowerPoints included in the back of each of the teacher resource books. Along with the audio CD of the drama, you also get a corresponding professionally done PowerPoint with lecture notes. So you don't even have to make your own PowerPoint presentation or write your own lecture notes if you don't want to. It's all there in the teacher resource. The teacher resources are not part of the kits, free kits that you get today. They're more expensive. They're about $50 each, so we couldn't include that with the money we had to work with the grant. So if you want the teacher resources, you would have to purchase them separately. That's what they come with, and here are some samples of what the slides look like. Our college-level resources include Father Spitzer's book, 10 Universal Principles, and his other college-level book, Healing the Culture. These books, 10 Universal Principles will work on the high school level, but it's really meant for the college level and the adult level. Healing the Culture is definitely postgraduate. It's a difficult book for a lot of college students to read. So if you're working with college students or adults, then that might be a good kit for you to get, is Father Spitzer's 2 books. And then there's also the DVD series starring Father Spitzer, featuring Father Spitzer, called Healing the Culture. And it's 17 or 19 half-hour units. I forget how many, it's a lot. Half-hour units where he teaches this entire curriculum in true Spitzer form. It's brilliant, it's moving, it's beautiful, it's very, very enticing for an audience that is pro-life and an audience that is not pro-life. So that's something I would encourage you to get, one of those 3 resources, or the kits including those, if you're working with adults or with college students.